Good evening. Y'all answer me way better than you answer Case. No, I'm a little nervous. I don't know if you can tell it from down there, if I haven't told you yet, but I'll be straight up honest with you. I'm nervous, but we're going to make it through. So if you hear my knees banging on the back of this pulpit, just mind your business, and we'll keep on going from there. Now, I give a lot of credit to preachers like Case that do this from week to week, because it took me weeks itself to prepare this one. But no, in all seriousness, I hope that it's not seen by you tonight throughout the lesson, and I hope you're able to get something from the lesson and apply it to your life. As Case mentioned this morning, this lesson will be used at the Cedar Grove Lectureship coming this Saturday, the 13th, Saturday the 13th, beginning at 9 o'clock. So if you hadn't made plans, me and Riley, like it was announced, Case will be there doing some things as well. So if you haven't made plans, be there for that if you can, to support all of that going on. So if you don't like the lesson tonight, let me know, and I will try to fix some things or change it one or the other. Might help if I turn this on. Now then, weathering the storms of life. Weathering the storms of life. You know, I believe this is something that we all go through, if we're honest with ourselves. We're all faced with trials, with tribulations, with things that bother us from day to day, through the bad times, whatever is thrown our way. But if you look around and if you're honest with yourself again, you realize that you're not alone. Each and every one of us are faced with trials. Each and every one of us have those tribulations in our lives that kind of set us back. I'm reminded of people in the Bible, such as these three men listed on the screen, and you all may immediately know where I'm going with these three men. But someone like Job is a good example of someone who had to weather his storm in his life. All his possessions was taken from him. A man that was pretty wealthy, had a lot of belongings, but had all his possessions, belongings taken from him. Even had his wife at one point try to get him to turn against God and turn against the Lord. But yet he had faith in the Lord. He even said in chapter 1, verse 21 of Job, "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Through all of his trials, through all the things that had happened to him, he knew the source of strength, and that was in the Lord. Or a man like Paul. You know, this may not be one of the first men that comes to your mind as far as trials in life. I'll mention him again later on in the lesson, especially compared to Job. You may not think that it's as bad, I guess you could say, as a trial, as a tribulation that Job had. But he was first known as Saul, persecuted Christians, killed them, even called himself the chief of sinners. But God knew his heart, and he was converted on the road to Damascus, and he finished the Christian race, he kept the faith, and he knew the goal that he had in mind, eternal, which was heaven. Or how can we talk about trials in life without talking about Jesus Christ himself? You know, in my mind, when I think of trials and Jesus, my mind immediately goes to the crucifixion. And how can it not? The pains and sufferings he had to endure on the cross, the things that he had to go through, both physically and mentally, emotionally, all of them. But if you look out through the life of Christ, if you read through his life, even before the crucifixion, he had to endure many things in his life and suffered great trials and hardship in every way, probably more than any one of us humans here on earth will ever have to endure. But thanks be to God, he provides a way of peace, strength, and comfort and encouragement through these trying times in our life through his word. I have 3 points tonight that I want to kind of go about, and hopefully that can be a help to you to try to persevere through these storms in life and try to help you weather the storms that you have in life. First, went too quick. First is build a firm foundation. Build a firm foundation. It was read for us just a few moments ago, and that's a little small, so I apologize. I didn't realize it was going to be that small. It's in Matthew 7, verses 24 through 28. Matthew 7, 24 through 28. We'll read it again. "Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken to him a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. For everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell. And great was its fall. And so it was, when Jesus had ended these sayings, that the people were astonished at his teachings. How could they not be? This is at the very end of the greatest sermon ever preached by Jesus himself, the Sermon on the Mount. And all these sayings that he had gone before in Matthew 5 and 6, and even in 7 before we get to here, he's talking about building a firm foundation. He uses the parable of a house here and having that firm foundation on the house. I have never built a house from the ground up, and since I know the outcome of what it would be, I probably never will. But I do know that it takes, in order to have a firm standing house, you have to have a what? A firm foundation. There's two men depicted here in his parable, in his teaching, one of which was the wise man, and one of which was the foolish man. The wise man heard these sayings, and the foolish man also heard these things. I think it's good to point out that both were able to hear these sayings. One had the opportunity and one did not. No, both had the opportunity and heard these sayings. But I think there's a difference, and the point I was getting to, there's a difference between a hearer and a listener. You could be here after services tonight, and you could be standing here down front, wherever you are, and you could be listening or hearing the things that are around you, hearing the conversations as they all blend in together. But if somebody is standing next to you and you're engaging in a conversation, I would hope that you are listening to that conversation. There's a difference between listening and hearing. We have to listen to the things that even when we read, we automatically think of our ears hearing, but you can also read it and listen to the things that you hear. But built upon that, we have to do those things that we hear and that we listen to. And that was the problem here that Jesus was teaching about the firm foundation and where they put their foundation. The wise man heard these sayings and did them, and his house what? It stood firm. The foolish man heard these sayings but did not do them, and his house collapsed. I'm reminded of a passage in James chapter 1, verses 23 through 24, where it says, "For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man observing his natural face in a mirror, for he observes himself and goes away and immediately forgets what kind of man he was." It is important to build a firm foundation. Whether we're weathering our storms in life or not, whether if we're having the best day of our life, it is important to notice or to have that firm foundation in Christ. A weak foundation will never stand against the storms and the stresses that life tosses our way. Build a firm foundation, point 1. Point 2, accept it and count it all joy. Accept it and count it all joy. I found this in James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. James 1, 2 through 4. James here says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." We may read this verse in our human minds, and we kind of chuckle and look at it again. All right, James, you're telling me to count joy, be happy when I'm faced with trials, be happy when certain things in my life don't go my way. And I think we fail to comprehend its meaning here and what James is trying to say by counting it joy in verse 2. I think of Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 10, and I think here it kind of sums up what James is meaning by counting joy in our trials. At the end of Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 10, it says, "Do not sorrow, for the joy of the Lord is your strength." The joy of the Lord is your strength. This joy is what's supposed to get us through these trials. Knowing that God is with us, knowing that He is our strength through all of our trials in life. Not necessarily be joyful because we're having to go through these trials or these sufferings in our life and enduring pains and all these other things, but that we know the Lord is on our side. That should be our joy. That should be helping us get us through these trials in our life and these storms that we're faced from day to day. A prime example I mentioned earlier, I'll come back to him, is Paul. Apostle Paul in Philippians chapter 4, verse 4, and I'm sure we've all heard of the verse mentioned Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. It's kind of like James here in verse 2. Count it joy when you fall into various trials. Okay, you have to think about it for a minute. Paul here, writing a letter while he is in a prison cell, saying to rejoice in the Lord always. You know, it's kind of, again, contradictory here, you would think, if you just skim over it and read it. Rejoice in the Lord always. And I think always was put there for a reason. You know, it's easy to rejoice in the Lord whenever good things are going on in our life. It's good to rejoice in the Lord when everything seems to go so smoothly throughout our life from day to day. But what about when those trials do come? What about when we're faced with tribulations in our life, with things that cause us to step back and take a minute to, breathe, you could say. Everything seems to be coming at you at once. We are still to rejoice in the Lord always. Even while he was in prison, probably in one of the lowest points in his life, one of the hardest trials he had to face in his life, Paul knew the secret to victory past these storms in his life, and that was joy. Count it all joy. But notice verse 3, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. And that's what I mean by accepting it. Accept that testing of your faith. These storms in our life, I think you can all agree when I say these storms in our life will never be easy. It's not something we wake up to every morning hoping and praying that we have storms or tribulations in our life. No, but it's the complete opposite. But we should use these storms in our life to comfort us, to give us strength through these storms, but more importantly, to build our faith, or point one, foundation, to be stronger. And at the end of this section of Scriptures, at verse 4, but let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. I think this scripture, or this section of Scriptures, explains the person that pushes through their storms in life. Patience leads to a perfect and complete person. And I'll notice perfect here. Even myself, I get caught up in the word perfect sometimes, thinking that I must be sinless and have no fault, even through the good times or bad times. And that's not what he means here. And I think that's why he follows it up with the word complete. Nobody is perfect except Jesus. But we are strived to be complete in all that we do. Accept that testing of your faith and count it joy, knowing that Christ, that God will be on our side through all the thick and the thin, whatever that we go through in life. Lastly, you can chuckle, you can laugh, smile. It's kind of cheesy, I'll admit. Look past the rain and see the sunshine. It kind of went along with the weathering the storm, so I went with it. I even laughed myself whenever I was typing it. But look past the rain and see the sunshine. Revelation 21, verses 3 through 4. Revelations 21, 3 through 4. It says, And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people. God himself will be with them and be their God. And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. In verse 3, you can see that God is with you every step of the way. He will never leave your side. He will be there from the beginning to the end, will never leave you alone. Kind of hints back to one of the points I mentioned earlier. We're not alone in whatever we do, whether the good times, the bad times. He's there to guide us through his watchful eye with his guiding hand, so to speak, to make sure we get through these trials in our life. But if you look at verse 4, you can see that a place that is prepared that is far better than where we are now, far better than what we have to endure in this life, these trials that we're faced every day. A place where there will be no tears, no death, no sorrow, crying, no more pain. The former things have passed away. You know, how could one, whether we're a Christian or not, how could one read that verse and not want to go there and be there one day with the Lord? You know, I think sometimes we have blindfolds over our eyes and we fail to see the main goal, the main picture, and we see the here and now. While that's not a bad thing in and of itself, I think it harms us from seeing, like I said, the main picture, the main goal, and where we're striving to be each and every day, even through our storms in our life. We see all the things happening here before us, all the positive things sometimes, but if we're honest with ourselves, most of the times, here and now, we look at the negative things that we have to endure in our lives. But I believe if we take those blindfolds off and look ahead, it would make it easier to go through these storms, these trials in our life, knowing that heaven will one day be our home if we remain faithful. Knowing that even though all these trials in our life may have been terrible, may have been hard to overcome, to persevere through, that we have a better place to go to and to strive for here on earth. You all know I like to lead singing, and so I can't help but bring a few songs, the lyrics that are in some of the songs that we sing. Songs like Farther Along. The first verse itself, tempted and tried, we're oft made to wonder why it should be thus all the day long, while there are others living about us, never molested, though in the wrong. And in the chorus, farther along, we'll know all about it. Farther along, we'll understand why. Cheer up, my brother. Live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. Our trials dark on every hand, and we cannot understand all the ways that God will lead us to that blessed promised land. But he will guide us with his eye, and will follow till we die, and we will understand it better by and by. And lastly, a song that was titled, Heaven Will Surely Be Worth It All. Often I'm hindered on my way, burden so heavy I almost fall. But then I hear Jesus sweetly say, heaven will surely be worth it all. Through all these trials in life, through all the things that we have to endure, we have this promise made before us if we stay faithful to God, stay faithful to his word, and endure to the end. I want to close with one of my favorite verses here lately that has kind of helped me weather the storms in my life, I guess you could say. In Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord and with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Maybe you're here tonight and you are not a Christian. You haven't put on Christ in baptism. Well, tonight is no better night. Or maybe you are a Christian, but you have fallen away. Maybe the storms in your life have caused you to lose your faith, to fall away from God, fall away from the Scriptures and the things that you know you should do. Whatever the case may be, if you have a need, please come forward as we stand and as we sing.